think about what a reserve currency means first. The first is the medium of exchange, right? That when you're doing trade invoicing, you necessarily have to have exchange rates. Now, suppose there are 30 major currencies in the world. There are 30 major currencies which account for 85-90% of world GDP. Now, if all of these exchange rates, all of these 30 currencies have to have liquid exchange rates. You know what liquid exchange rates means? That there is sufficient demand and supply at all times. So if I want to convert from, say, a rupee to a Turkish lira, I should be able to do it, in a liquid way.
And the least costs.
Least cost, exactly. So, and that I can do it whenever I want and at the lowest possible loss or gain. Now, maintaining, as a, basic maths will tell you, it's NC2, right? So, basically 30 into 29 by 2, number of exchange rates that need to be kept liquid. If you think about 20, so all of those crosses have to be kept liquid. If, on the other hand, all of us can agree that let's have one guy who we all trust is the most responsible. He may not be very responsible, but he's the most responsible. We'll say let's maintain. So then you only need 29 crosses. So whenever I want to convert from, say, the rupee to the lira, I convert from rupee to dollar because that's liquid, and then there is a dollar to lira cross which is liquid, so I can convert with the lowest cost. So for the system, having one currency in which everyone invoices or everyone has a liquid exchange rate with is most efficient. So that is one reason, one way of quantifying a reserve currency. So because the US was the biggest economy, of course it was the dominant power, and also was the largest trading country in the world, it was a natural choice at that time. The second aspect of being a reserve currency is that the signaling of safety. So what can happen, just like we discussed runs on banks, there can be runs on countries.
Yep.
So any country will have foreign assets and will have foreign liabilities. Suppose I am a country and I have, say, $100 of land in Nigeria, and to buy that, or not to buy that, for some other reason, I have, say, $80 of liabilities which are like loans which have to be repaid in 2 years. Now, given that I have $100 of land and I have only $80 of liabilities, if I want to 2 years later borrow $80 from somewhere else and then repay that loan, and it can work. But if suddenly people start doubting whether that Nigerian land is worth it or not, or my paper rights or whatever the rights are proper or not, then no one will pay me money. And then suddenly, because of this liquidity problem, my currency can start getting devalued. Now, so to prevent that from happening, you have to signal that, look, I am a safe country, that if you hold my currency or if you transact with me in my currency, you will not lose money, right? And it will stay liquid. And so to signal that, people or countries, and mostly central banks, start building up reserves. Now, you would want to build reserves in currencies which are considered stable by everyone else. And this is a classic network effect problem, right? And people are on some social media platforms because everyone else is on them. That may not be the best social media platform, but you're there because everyone is there. And it's somewhat similar in the case of building foreign currency reserves, that you want to build reserves in assets which everyone else thinks are safe. And because everyone else thinks they are safe, then they also become liquid and easily transactable. For the US government to keep its debt to GDP, the sovereign debt to GDP ratio, like how many dollars has it valued, has it borrowed, and what is the economy which is supporting the size of the economy. That ratio is very important. They were trying to keep it in a range, but if you see the current projections over the next 10 years, the US debt to GDP, sovereign debt to GDP, is likely to go significantly higher than it was even at the end of the Second World War. Now, if you have that level of fiscal expansion and debt to GDP increase, then it is natural to assume that the markets will start feeling a bit jittery about their ability to keep the dollar stable. So if inflation in dollar terms, so if in the US economy becomes very high, some of these transitions can actually get accelerated. So Asia, for example, as a trade bloc is now much larger. In fact, Asia's global share of GDP has gone up significantly.
Correct.
So the domination in terms of goods and services trade that the US had is no longer that clear, right? And it's no longer as dominating. And therefore, it is possible for a group of countries to start invoicing in different or in a local currency. So, for example, say China and Saudi Arabia. So there's a lot of oil that China buys from Saudi Arabia. There's a lot of manufacturing goods that China supplies to Saudi Arabia. So they can do their transaction in local currency.
Provided trust and ease of
Correct.
exchange, etc.
Correct. So you can still do it, right? So for example, say the rupee trade in oil with Russia.
Right.
So despite the fact that Russia has a big surplus with India, a significant amount of invoicing has happened in rupees.
Right.
But so long as you're right that they trust that India will be responsible with the rupee and will not force a very rapid devaluation.
Devaluation, yeah.
And similarly, if China has to think about making an RMB or the CNY, the renminbi to the Chinese yuan to become an alternative to the US dollar, they have to first keep it steady and stable. So you cannot let it sort of be very volatile because then people start worrying about it. Second, as you were saying earlier, you need to open up your capital account so that people are comfortable holding CNY or assets which are sort of valued in CNY. Because if they are not and the capital account is not open, then they'll always be circumspect about, what if there were sudden restrictions, then I will not be able to take my money out. So, which is why these things take a while to shift.
Right.
Remember that the US became larger than the UK in economic size sometime in the 1880s, 1883, 84 or something like that. But the pound was still the reserve currency till 1932, 33. Right? So till the time that they broke their peg to the dollar, to gold, the pound was still the reserve currency for international trading. It's only after, so it takes 40, 50 years or took 40, 50 years.
Right. And some event like World War was perhaps an event where,
Yes. Well, in this case, it was I think the choice after the First World War to sort of peg the currency back to gold, which led to problems in the UK economy.
Right.
And that created. I mean, so there are several monetary factors that drove that. But yeah, it's not necessary that just because China's economy is big that it becomes an alternative to the US dollar. But remember that there are some other very interesting changes that are happening. So we discussed the Triffin Dilemma, right? So there is also now that called the new Triffin Dilemma, which is that one of the reasons that people feel comfortable holding assets valued in US dollars, like US treasuries or other types of assets, is that they think that the US government is serious about honoring its commitments.